I thought about it because, whenever you see something set in Boston, you say, oh, can I do the Boston accent? And for some reason, as much as I wanted it, it just didn't quite feel right. Felt a little gratuitous. Felt like an unnecessary flex for the role. Believe me, I'm dying to use it. I'm dying to find a job for it.
Boy, having kids seems like a complete nightmare. Was that your takeaway from doing this, or reading the script, or how did you feel after reading that first script for the first time?
Yeah, I mean, I think, of course, parents out there will relate, somewhat to, their hopes and anxieties with children, and it's just a very extreme situation that they're going through. But yeah, I don't know how they do it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think for the most part, we'd all agree. Loving deeply is a risk, and there's a gamble involved, and you really got to untether yourself and let the ocean take you out. But a kid is different because you are the primary caregiver. You're in charge of their lives. You know what I mean? It's not, if a marriage falls apart, you can leave. A child, it's on you. You know what I mean? And that's daunting.
But what was it that drew you both to this project specifically? Michelle, where were you at in your life when you read it? And what was it that made you think Laurie was someone you wanted to explore?
I do love this type of genre, I have to say.
That's true.
So I was really drawn to it from the beginning, but I loved the journey of the character and, the sort of roller coaster that they go on as a family. And with this show, it was lots of reasons. There were, sometimes there's a lot of reasons why you want to go ahead with something. And I love the character, I love the script, but I also loved Morten and Mark, our writer and director. And I thought, if they're at the helm of this, it's going to be really good. Chris and Jaden, and sometimes everything sort of comes together and it feels right. And that job really felt like that.
Chris, how about you?
Well said. I mean, I agree with a lot of that. I really like the genre, but what I liked about Andy, I not to be, hopefully this isn't too revealing, I like the idea, the concept of exploring guilt. I think a lot of people, and I do believe that's kind of Andy's main theme. I think Andy's a guy that had a tricky childhood, and I think a lot of people who have challenges at that chapter of their lives learn some really tricky coping mechanisms that are related to burying and just kind of denying certain things that happened. And you end up feeling a guilt that the echo never really goes away, no matter how deeply you bury it. But to Michelle's point, I mean, I meeting with Mark and Morten so many times, and eventually at a certain point, you just say, I want to work with these people. You got to go to work every day, and you got to create and take risks rather. And, Mark and Morten are just such lovely individuals and very clear thinkers, and they both had kids roughly the same age as Baden, and so you could sense the personal investment they had, and it just felt like the right fit.
Did the show make you reevaluate those things that we kind of pass on to our children, whether it's our temper or mental illness or secret murder grandpas? Did it make you sort of look into that responsibility more?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it examines the age-old nature versus nurture question. I mean, I certainly, even my sister's 3 kids, from, before society and culture had their chance to have their impact, these kids had their stripes, you know what I mean? So to some degree, obviously, nurture plays a role, but nature is undeniable. And again, that's what links to Andy's sense of guilt, because regardless of what you do as a parent, how much could this have been how unavoidable was this?
Yeah, certainly. I think it piqued my curiosity, and it's something that I'd never sort of even heard about, the idea of this, the murder gene. And of course it does make you wonder and question. What's interesting about it in the story is that Laurie is the one that kind of drives it, because they want to rule out the murder gene. And then some of his traits end up being from her. And this is all up for kind of discussion, of course, that whole subject. Right. But it's just a really interesting part of the story that is a kind of added, part of it adds to the drama, certainly.
How did you two form your little family with Jaden on set? Because you jump right into filming and you need to be that cohesive family unit. Was there a strategy to that, or did you just depend on chemistry and hoping for the best.
A lot of karaoke.
Yeah. Karaoke really breaks down the walls. Well, luckily, Jaden is, a 70-year-old man hiding in a child's body. I mean, he's one of the most mature, thoughtful, just so advanced in every single way possible, a kid I've ever worked with. So he there was no need for kid gloves. He kind of dove in right away. And so, yeah, I mean, a lot of it is a testament to just the preparation of the people involved that luckily we kind of, it just clicked right away.
The thing about the Barbers, especially from the jump in defending Jacob, is they are sort of thrust into infamy overnight. And while this is obviously a completely different situation, did that sort of sudden public scrutiny remind you at all of either of your experiences with sort of overnight super fame? Were there any shadows of familiarity there, or was this just such a completely different animal?
Some, yeah, certainly some things were familiar. And that's something you never really are prepared for when it happens, suddenly when there's press suddenly interested in you, so there was a certain amount of that I felt like I could relate to. But I mean, on a scale like they're experiencing, it's just, it's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it's so, it's very interesting, given the fact that you're right, there are parallels about the sense of isolation based on circumstance, but given what's going on right now, very quickly the entire world has been able to get at least a slight flavor of that kind of unforeseen circumstance that removes you from your routine and your norms to a sense of deep isolation. So it would feel foolish to say that celebrity was the way in to that, and because right now everyone has that taste in their mouth.
Something I'm fascinated by with actors is sort of how they find the physicality of emotion. Chris, Andy is obviously mastered sort of sublimating his anger.
Yeah.
As an actor, how do you embody that? Like, does it change how you stand, how you walk? Like, what does that do? What do you do in that?
First of all, sublimating is a great word. I love a good word. That was fantastic. Yeah, I do think that, a lot of people, sadly, who go through trauma early develop coping methods that are very connected to their physicality, whether they learn not to smile or laugh or show emotion in general. It's a defense mechanism. I think he's one of these guys that has just said, you know what, this works for me. And as a result, he does feel a little ossified and disconnected. And I think, certain moments in the story, you see Laurie say, don't do that. Don't shut me out.
Right.
Like there is a pattern of his behavior, but it doesn't feel as problematic to him. It just kind of feels like the only option. He's a very unexplored guy, and yeah, that does permeate his physical posturing and his taciturn vernacular. And so I think a lot of that is connected to the trauma that happens in youth, and that was an exciting thing to kind of bring to life in a subtle way, because you don't want to lead with that. I think that projects too much the reveals that happen later in the episodes.
Michelle, the same thing happens. And I could see it develop with Laurie's doubt. You could kind of feel it like radiating off of her, let's say, as the episodes went around. How did that build in your body as an actress as you were playing it?
I mean, playing a character that has, so many of those moments that have that intensity. It's sort of, your body does, you feel it. It's a sort of tension that I had to kind of keep hold of, that sort of being on the verge of bursting into tears or a breakdown, so it's, I had to get a lot of sleep. I had to, when I was doing this, because I could feel it, actually. It was one of those roles where emotionally it was tiring at times. But we really had to sort of map out, when she actually lets it out and when she holds it back, because I was very conscious of Laurie not sort of turning into this sort of, ball of tears throughout the whole thing. So, and that's the kind of challenge that she faces, as the character, is that she has to kind of keep that composure through those moments, in the courtroom and but it's this kind of bubbling emotion underneath. So it required a lot more focus, this part, I guess, than other roles that I've played, just to kind of stay in the zone.
So I also know for one of you, filming in the Boston area was literally like going home, and for one of you it was not. Michelle, how did you find the area? And Chris, how was it to sort of nourish your roots and introduce everyone to your stomping ground?
I loved Boston. I really, really fell in love with it. It was just a really great place to be. I love the people, the food, social life was so great. I mean, it was a really special place to be. I didn't get much time in the city because we were filming in the suburbs, but I did get to go to a Red Sox game. Got a little bit of, some things that I managed to fit in while I was there, but I loved it. It's a really special place. And Chris introduced me to places like Warden Pond, which is this beautiful place that I used to go and sit out at weekends. And yeah, it's a really special place.
Yeah, I mean, it was an embarrassment of riches on this project, just because, I did get to live in my own house, and we shot 20 minutes away. So I'm sleeping in my own bed at nights and seeing my family and going to the restaurants and that I know. And when you're doing a project like this, it really is emotionally draining, and there really, really is value in the environment for recharging, right. And I never really understood. I mean, I've always appreciated being home, but you appreciate being home because it's familiar and comfortable. But in terms of actually kind of resetting your emotional state and preparing again for the coming week of work after 1 week has already been so exhausting, it really is invaluable to be able to just feel that sense of comfort and familiarity to speed up the process of rejuvenation for the coming Monday.
Along the lines of what we were talking about earlier about the culture shock of fame, after Downton Abbey took off, after joining the MCU, was there a moment that made you realize, oh, everything is different now?
For me, the process of deciding whether or not to do Captain America in general was that kind of struggle. And so for me, just the phone call where I kind of said, I'll do it, was the moment where my brain switched to like, all right, you're in it now. It wasn't like, oh, this will be easy, and then all of a sudden it was the premiere where I was like, what? I had already built it up to be this enormous thing in my head. So just the phone call agreeing to do it was what kind of sent up that signal in my mind of like, all right, this is going to be different now.
That makes total sense. Michelle, Downton wasn't as much of a sure thing going in. Like, was there something that sort of triggered that realization in you?
We never knew. We had no idea, that it would become what it became. And I guess just seeing, I remember being I went to like a, news agents to pick up a paper one morning. It was like when the first or second episode had aired here in the UK. And went to get milk or something. And I looked down at the papers and there were like 4 covers of papers with me and the 3 sisters. And I was just like, I'd literally just gone to get a pint of milk, and there it was. But it felt really sort of overnight. But I think it's when America really took notice. I think that's
yeah, sure.
That's where it really sunk in, being recognised in America, and it felt very much kind of overnight.